Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today, we're diving into something super interesting, and I think a lot of you are going to find this pretty relevant to your own work.
Oh, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
definitely eye-opening, that's for sure.
Yeah. We're talking about gender disparities in science, but not just the usual stuff you hear about. We're going deeper, looking specifically at how men and women collaborate differently, particularly when it comes to international research.
Right, and I think a lot of people just assume that women are less collaborative, period.
Mm.
But what we're seeing here is that it's way more nuanced than that. It's not just about the numbers, but about how those numbers reveal different patterns of collaboration.
Yeah, exactly. So to get into the nitty-gritty, this deep dive is based on a really comprehensive study of over 25,000 university professors,
Yeah, a huge data
a
set.
massive data set. And the researchers really looked at everything, like their bios, their publications, citations, you name it. And they specifically focused on four types of collaboration: general, national, institutional, and the one we're really zeroing in on, international collaboration.
And what's interesting is that the study found that overall, women are actually more collaborative than men when it comes to general, national, and institutional collaboration.
So within their own institutions and countries, women are rocking it on the collaboration front. But then when we zoom out to the international level, that's where we start to see some pretty interesting and maybe even a little bit concerning trends. What did you think when you first saw this data?
Well, to be honest, I was a bit taken aback. We often hear about the importance of international collaboration in science, right? Like it's seen as this key driver of innovation, a way to connect with the best minds around the world and to really make a global impact with your research. But what this study shows is that there's this gap in international collaboration between men and women, and that gap can have some pretty big implications.
Yeah, it's like a domino effect, right? I mean, if you're not collaborating internationally, you might be missing out on opportunities to secure bigger grants, to get your work published in those top-tier journals, and even to build those relationships that can help advance your career.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. And those missed opportunities can then lead to wider gender disparities down the line in terms of recognition, funding, and overall impact.
So even if the difference in collaboration rates isn't huge at the start, it can really snowball over time, creating this sort of Matthew effect where the rich get richer.
Precisely. And this is where things get even more intriguing. When you break down the data by academic discipline, you see that this international collaboration gap isn't uniform across all fields.
Yeah, it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all situation. I mean, for instance, we see that in fields like computer science, business, economics, biochemistry, and even earth sciences. Women are actually more likely to collaborate internationally than men.
Isn't that fascinating? It really flips the script on what we might expect.
It totally does. But then you look at fields like medicine, engineering, physics, and chemistry, and suddenly the trend reverses. Men are the ones with more international connections.
Oh yeah, in those fields, there's a pretty clear difference. And just to throw another wrench in the works, chemical engineering pops up as the most gender-neutral field when it comes to international collaborations. It's like it has its own little microclimate.
It's like every field has its own unique culture, its own set of norms and expectations around collaboration. And those norms might be subtly influencing who collaborates with whom and how often.
Right, and it really makes you think, doesn't it? Are certain academic cultures consciously or unconsciously encouraging or discouraging women from seeking out those international collaborations?
Yeah. And then you add in the factor of age, and things get even more complex. I mean, I know I've definitely seen a shift in my own collaboration patterns as I've moved through different stages of my career.
Oh, tell me about it. I feel like I'm constantly having to reassess my priorities, my network, my whole approach to collaboration. It's a dynamic process for sure.
It is. So what jumped out at you from the age-related findings in this study? What really struck a chord?
Well, one thing that really caught my attention is that younger scientists, both men and women, are more likely to collaborate internationally. It's like they're more eager to make those connections early on. Perhaps they're less bound by traditional ways of doing things. They're more willing to experiment.
Yeah, they're fresh out of the gate, ready to make their mark, build their networks, and see where those collaborations might lead them.
Exactly. But then as scientists get older, that initial enthusiasm for international collaboration seems to plateau. And that's when we start to see some really interesting gender differences emerge.
Yeah, like those older women in math, physics, and social sciences who are actually collaborating internationally more than their male counterparts. It's almost like those fields become more welcoming to international collaboration for women as they gain seniority, which is kind of the opposite of what we see in other fields.
It's a real head-scratcher, isn't it?
Yeah.
What do you think might be driving that trend? It's almost like these women have overcome some invisible barrier and are now reaping the benefits of international collaboration.
Right. It's like they've earned their stripes and now they're free to collaborate with whomever they choose, wherever they choose. But why is that happening in those specific fields and not others? That's a question for the ages, I think.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating puzzle, and it definitely warrants further exploration. But before we get too carried away, I think it's important to acknowledge that this research does have some limitations.
Yeah, we always got to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
So what are we missing here? What's the caveat?
Well, the main one is that this study focused solely on Polish academics. So it's essentially a snapshot of one particular scientific landscape, not necessarily a reflection of global trends.
Right. It's a starting point, not the whole story.
Exactly. And it raises so many questions like how much of this is specific to Poland and how much applies to other countries? How has this data changed over time? And how does this all connect to the broader issue of gender disparities in publishing, in citations, in grant funding, and ultimately in career advancement?
It really makes you realize that there's so much more to the story than just looking at the overall numbers, right?
Mm.
When we start peeling back the layers and looking at things like specific fields and career stages, that's where things get super interesting.
Yeah, it's like those magic eye posters where you have to kind of blur your vision to see the hidden image.
Exactly. And one of those hidden images is the impact of age on international collaboration.
Right. And that's something that really resonated with me, especially as someone who's been in the game for a while now. I mean, I've definitely noticed a shift in my own approach to collaboration over the years.
Me too, for sure. Like when you're first starting out, you're so eager to connect with everyone and anyone who might be doing something remotely related to your research.
Yeah, it's all about building that network, casting a wide net, seeing what sticks.
Exactly. But then as you get older, you become more selective, more strategic. You start to focus on those collaborations that are really going to move the needle, that align with your long-term goals.
And I think that shift is reflected in the data from this study. They found that regardless of gender, younger scientists are generally more inclined towards international collaboration.
Which makes sense, right? They're fresh out of grad school, they're more mobile, they're eager to make a name for themselves.
Right, they're not as tied down by family commitments or established research programs. They have more freedom to explore, to take risks.
Yeah. And it's like they're still in that absorb everything phase of their career. They want to learn from as many people as possible from all over the world.
Exactly. But then as scientists get older, that initial drive for international collaboration seems to level off. And that's when we start to see some fascinating gender differences emerge.
Like those older women in math, physics, and social sciences we were talking about earlier, the ones who are actually more internationally active than their male counterparts.
Yes. Such an interesting finding, and it really challenges some of our assumptions about how gender and age intersect with international collaboration.
Because in most fields, the trend is that the gender gap in international collaboration widens as scientists get older.
Right, it's like those traditional gender roles and expectations start to kick in.
Yeah.
Women might be taking on more caregiving responsibilities, they might be facing more barriers to advancement, and that can make it harder for them to prioritize international collaborations.
Yeah, it's like they're being pulled in different directions, and those international collaborations might start to feel like more of a luxury than a necessity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then, in those fields like math, physics, and social sciences, it's like something flips. Those older women are bucking the trend. It's almost like those fields become more welcoming to international collaboration for women as they climb the academic ladder.
It's a real head-scratcher. Why would that be the case? What's so special about those fields?
It's hard to say for sure, but it could be that those fields have a different culture around collaboration. Maybe they're more interdisciplinary by nature. Maybe they're more open to different perspectives and ways of working.
Or maybe it's something about the career paths of women in those disciplines. Maybe they're more likely to have mentors who encourage international collaboration, or maybe they're just more tenacious, more determined to break through those barriers.
It's definitely something that needs further investigation. But there's another piece of the puzzle we need to consider, and that's academic rank. This study found that full professors, regardless of gender, are more likely to collaborate internationally than those in more junior positions.
Makes sense, right? They have more experience, they've built up those international networks, they have more clout to lead big projects.
Exactly. They're the ones who are often invited to speak at conferences, to collaborate on grant proposals, to serve as mentors for younger researchers from all over the world.
Right. It's like they're at the top of the food chain, so they have more opportunities to engage in those high-level international collaborations.
Precisely. But here's another interesting twist. The type of university also seems to make a difference. Researchers at larger, more comprehensive universities are more likely to collaborate internationally than those at smaller, more specialized institutions.
I guess that's not too surprising either. Those big universities often have more resources, more established international networks, more opportunities for global engagement built right in.
Yeah. They might have dedicated offices for international collaboration, exchange programs, joint research initiatives, all that jazz.
It's like they've created this infrastructure that makes it easier for their faculty to connect with collaborators around the world.
And all of this circles back to our earlier conversation about the impact of these collaboration patterns on a scientist's career. If international collaboration is seen as a mark of prestige, as a pathway to greater influence, then those who are less likely to collaborate internationally might be at a disadvantage when it comes to securing grants, getting published in top journals, or even getting promoted.
Right. It creates this sort of feedback loop where more international collaboration leads to more recognition, which in turn leads to even more opportunities for international collaboration.
And for certain groups, like women in certain fields, breaking into that loop can be incredibly challenging.
So what's the key takeaway here? What does this all mean for our listeners, regardless of what field they're in or what stage of their career they're at?
I think the biggest takeaway is that gender disparities in science are complex and go far beyond just the numbers. It's not just about how many women are in a field. It's also about the underlying systems and structures that shape collaboration patterns and ultimately impact a scientist's entire career trajectory.
And this research, though focused on Poland, gives us a glimpse into those systems and structures.
It highlights how important it is to understand the dynamics of collaboration and how they might be subtly influencing our own fields.
Yeah, it encourages us to be more aware of who we're collaborating with, why we're collaborating with them, and how those choices might be influenced by factors beyond our individual control, like gender and the culture of our specific discipline.
Exactly. And it's not about placing blame or pointing fingers. It's about recognizing that these systems exist and that we all have a role to play in creating a more equitable and inclusive scientific landscape.
So it's not just about individual choices, it's about the bigger picture, the context in which those choices are made.
Precisely. And by understanding that context, we can start to think about ways to create a more level playing field, one where collaboration truly serves as a tool for advancing knowledge, regardless of gender.
Love that. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to touch on one more fascinating aspect of this research, the statistical model they created.
Oh yeah, the logistic regression analysis. That was a really clever way to quantify the influence of all those different variables we've been talking about. Gender, age, academic position, discipline, type of university, you name it, and see how much each one contributes to the overall likelihood of a scientist being internationally collaborative.
So it's like a mathematical equation that can predict whether or not a scientist is likely to have international collaborators based on all these different factors.
Exactly. And what's really cool is that the model confirmed what we've been discussing intuitively. It showed that gender, age, academic position, field of study, and even the type of university all contribute to varying degrees to a scientist's likelihood of collaborating internationally.
So it's not just one single factor, it's a whole web of interconnected elements that shape the landscape of scientific collaboration.
Right, it's like a recipe where each ingredient has its own unique flavor, but it's the combination of all those flavors that creates the final dish.
Perfect analogy. And what I found really interesting is that the model helped to pinpoint the relative strength of each of those factors. So, for instance, being male does increase the odds of being internationally collaborative, but that effect is actually pretty small compared to, say, the effect of being a full professor or working in a specific field.
Right, so while gender matters, it's not the only thing that matters. There are all these other structural factors that are playing a huge role.
And that really highlights the importance of looking at these issues from a systems perspective, right?
Yeah.
We need to consider all of the factors that contribute to gender disparities in science, not just the most obvious ones.
Exactly. It's like trying to fix a leaky faucet. You can keep tightening the same screw over and over again, but if the problem is actually with the pipes, you're never going to solve it.
Love that. Okay, so we've talked about the findings, we've talked about the implications, but now let's get real. The researchers did point out some limitations of their study.
Oh, absolutely. It's crucial to remember that this research was conducted in a single country and captured data from a single period. It offers a valuable snapshot, but it's not necessarily a perfect reflection of global trends.
Right, it's like a case study. We can glean important insights from it, but we need to be cautious about overgeneralizing.
Exactly. And that's where the need for further research comes in. We need more cross-cultural studies, more longitudinal data, and more nuanced analyses that take into account the unique contexts of different scientific communities around the world.
So this deep dive is really just the beginning. It's a first step in a much larger ongoing conversation.
Precisely. And that's exactly what we hope to achieve here, to spark curiosity, raise awareness, and encourage our listeners to delve deeper into these important issues.
It's like we've uncovered this hidden world of scientific collaboration with all its complexities and nuances.
A world where gender, age, discipline, institution, all these factors are intertwined, shaping the opportunities and trajectories of researchers around the globe.
And it makes you wonder, right, if we know that these disparities exist, what can we actually do about it? How do we translate these findings into action, into real change?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's not an easy one to answer, but I think this research provides a really valuable starting point. It gives us a framework for thinking about solutions, for identifying the leverage points where we can intervene to create a more equitable and inclusive scientific landscape.
Yeah, it's like we've got this map now, and it's showing us where the rough patches are, where we need to smooth things out.
Exactly. And one of those rough patches is clearly around international collaboration. We need to find ways to make those opportunities more accessible to everyone, regardless of gender, age, or academic background.
Totally. So what concrete steps can we take? What are some actionable ideas that funding agencies, universities, even individual researchers can implement to start moving the needle in the right direction?
Well, one idea that comes to mind is for funding agencies to specifically prioritize international collaborations in their grant programs. They could offer bonus points for proposals that involve researchers from multiple countries, or they could create special funding mechanisms that are specifically designed to support international collaborations.
I like that. It's like putting your money where your mouth is, right? Showing that you actually value and want to encourage international collaboration.
Exactly. And universities could do their part by creating more opportunities for early career researchers to connect with international collaborators. They could offer travel grants to attend conferences abroad, or they could set up exchange programs with universities in other countries.
Right, those early career connections can be so valuable. It's like planting seeds that can grow into long-lasting collaborations.
Absolutely. And mentorship is another crucial piece of the puzzle. We need to create more opportunities for women to connect with senior researchers who have experience navigating the world of international collaboration. It's about providing guidance, support, and encouragement, especially in those fields where women are underrepresented.
Yeah, it's like having a Sherpa who can help you navigate the terrain, avoid the pitfalls, and reach the summit.
Perfect analogy. And universities can also play a role in shifting the culture around collaboration. They could start incentivizing international collaboration as part of their hiring and promotion decisions, making it clear that they value global engagement as much as individual achievement.
Yeah, it's about moving away from that hyper-individualistic publish or perish mentality and toward a more collaborative approach to science.
Right, because at the end of the day, science is a collective endeavor. It's about sharing ideas, working together to solve problems, and advancing knowledge for the benefit of all humankind.
Beautifully said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the fascinating world of international research collaboration, what's the one big thought-provoking idea you want to leave our listeners with? What's the nugget of wisdom you want them to carry with them?
Well, I think the main takeaway is that collaboration is the lifeblood of science. It's how ideas are shared, tested, refined, and ultimately transformed into new knowledge that benefits us all. But the ways in which we collaborate are shaped by a complex interplay of factors, including gender, culture, and institutional structures. By becoming aware of those factors, we can start to challenge them, to break down those barriers, and to create a more equitable and inclusive scientific landscape where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
That's such a powerful message. So much food for thought. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you learned something new, challenge some assumptions, and maybe even spark some ideas for how you can contribute to a more collaborative and inclusive scientific community. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to the original research and other resources if you want to dive even deeper. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep collaborating.